Hello, everyone. I'm Sam. I'm the co-founder of Experience Travel Group, and I'm joined by my colleague Sarah. Just to set the scene, Experience Travel Group's been going almost 20 years now, and we started with Sri Lanka, India's smaller neighbour, and we have been doing India for well over 10 years now, and we absolutely love it. What we want to do here is just bring just a little introduction, a little taste really to India. We can't do it justice in 45 minutes, but we wanted to just introduce India and challenge a few common myths and misconceptions that people might have about India and first time travelers to India. So that's what we're going to try and do. Now, while we go through, please ask any questions at all. We will try and finish by 6:45, so we can let you go off to have your suppers. But any questions at all, we'll try and get time to answer at the end. If we don't get time to answer at the end, we will answer them in good time and send out an email to follow up on that. Obviously, we would love to talk to you at another time. Either Sarah or one of our other India consultants can have a deep dive, a consultation with you and spend time talking about what would suit you, what you're interested in, and answer all questions that you might have. So do let us know by email after this if you'd like to do that. We're really happy to do that at any time. So without further ado, let's get started. Just to give you a little taster, we've got a brief video to get you in the mood. So there you go. Quick introduction to ETG. For those of you who don't know us, we offer what we call immersive luxury holidays in India with a touch of adventure. So I think sometimes as you get older and responsibilities come, and you kind of think that all your adventures can be behind you. And we think that should not be the case. And we think by challenging yourself, by pushing the comfort zone slightly, by doing interesting, immersive things, you can have the kind of adventures that really make you feel alive. And that's what we're here to help you do. And we think India is just an incredible destination for that. So we wanted to start, though, with busting some myths. Go straight in there. Before we even talk about India, we want to go straight in there with some myths that we find a lot of people have about travel to India. Myth one is that you will definitely get sick, the dreaded Delhi belly. Now, we wanted to get that one out the way straight away. We just don't think that is the case with an ETG holiday. Traveling at the moment, we wouldn't expect any of our clients to get ill or get Delhi belly. I mean, India is more hygienic. It's the facility, everything's logistically better run now than it was, say, 10, 20 years ago. You do need to follow some basic rules still, things like avoiding raw salads, unless you know the provenance, you're in a good hotel, making sure you avoid ice unless you know it's filtered and that sort of thing. However, the hotels that we use, scrupulous in their hygiene standards, and you can completely trust them. And also, we will recommend restaurants along the way, our guides, and we have restaurants to recommend, again, that have excellent standards in this respect. And we do recommend street food, and street food stops along the way if you want it, a part of almost all of our excursions. We make sure that we use street food where we know the hygiene is good. We know they're using, for example, fresh oil, etc., ingredients, and the food is moved very, very quickly. So by following the advice of our guides, you can have a real culinary adventure, and there's absolutely no reason that you will get Delhi belly. Just a word of warning though, there is something that does catch people, and that is eating a lot of rich food and mixing it with alcohol early on. So in some hotels, particularly the kind of chain hotels, you will get every meal served will be very, very rich, ghee heavy, spicy food, the sort of food that we know from the ubiquitous curry houses in the UK. This is really celebration food, which is meant to be eaten periodically on celebrations. It's a bit the equivalent of having a Christmas dinner every day. And if you eat that food, once or twice a day, mix it with alcohol and the slightly unfamiliar bugs in a new place when you first get to India, you will make yourself a little bit ill. So do watch that. Sarah, anything to add?
Yes, I do. They're all very, very good tips. Um, but you do need to remember about water. I have to say that sort of falling foul and sometimes drinking a tap water that's often put in a jug on the table in a local restaurant. Don't touch it. We provide we're part of the one bottle at a time initiative. So we encourage sort of using aluminium water bottles and minimizing plastic waste, and in the back of your chauffeur driven car there will be a purified water butt, so you be able to refill as you're going along your journey, and also a lot of the hotels have bottled water in your room that has been purified by reverse osmosis. So you'll be looked after in that way.
Yeah, because it's really important to stay rehydrated, of course. Now,
Absolutely.
myth number two is that India is too overcrowded, too overwhelming, really, to visit. And this couldn't resist including a picture of myself earlier this year in April in Uttarakhand, in the Himalayan foothills, where there was barely another soul, let alone it being too overcrowded. And India is a heavily populated country, but it is also a very big country, and there are huge amounts of countryside where it is not at all overcrowded. And in terms of tourism, there are honeypot destinations like the Taj Mahal, for example, but there are plenty of places to get away from it all. Sarah.
Yes, I'll totally second that. I think while the cities are really exciting, there's a lot going on. You do need to have a little bit of peace to offset that, and the countryside is wonderful for that. It also gives you a little bit of an insight into rural life, and it has its own sort of experiences. You can wander quite freely and independently through little hamlets and explore and sort of process everything that you've seen and take a breath. It's wonderful.
Absolutely. Myth number three is that it's too difficult to travel. Now, there's an element of truth here. It can be very difficult. Road travel can take a while. It can be difficult. It can be quite overwhelming, and if you get the routes wrong, long journey. So you can end up doing a lot in a short amount of time, and it becomes exhausting. So we've heard people say things like, I'm worried about going to India because I need a holiday after I've been to India on holiday. We think if you get the planning right, that's no need to worry about that at all. You can make sure that you're not trying to see too much. I think is the most important thing is not to try and see too much. Plan it right, get the routes right. We use fantastic vehicles and drivers that make a huge difference, and that's absolutely the minimum standard on any of our tours is to have a comfortable vehicle, and the roads are much better than they used to be in the past, so it is easier to make that work. And I think then it's quite right. Sarah, anything to add?
Yes, I think that it's important to also mix up the modes of transport. It's great having the security and the comfort of your driver, and but also experience the train travel as well. It's sort of very well connected, very comfortable as well. So if you are taking a slightly longer journey, then it can be quite fun to go by train. They have executive and chair AC classes, so lots of comfort, and you can get up and walk around, meet your fellow passengers, and it's a really wonderful way to travel. Your driver's still there, and looks after your luggage for you, so you don't have to worry about all of that as well.
Brilliant. Excellent. Okay. So as I showed you earlier, briefly, the slide, we're going to start on India proper. So I guess the first thing to say about India is it really stating the bleeding obvious, but it is an incredibly varied country, and there's so much to it. And famously, it's a subcontinent. So, from the verdant green tropical lushness of the south to the foothills and the Himalayas and the mighty Himalayas in the north, there is every type of scenery and everything in between, and an incredible variety and diversity of culture, of art and craft and history. And it is fairly overwhelming to know where to start. Even to try and do the whole of India in one trip is of course impossible unless you've got, I don't know, 6 months, a year, even 2 years to really explore. So we're going to ask Sarah just in a second to just sort of introduce the different areas that you might think about for a first time trip. And obviously we can go into way more detail. I'm happy to do that at another time, but Sarah will start and just do a bit of an overview.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. You're quite right. You can't do it all. I've been going to India for 20 years visiting, and I haven't covered it all. It's a beautiful, beautiful country, as you say, lots of diversity. But broadly, I would break it down to perhaps the south, and the Rajasthan area, and then the foothills of the Himalayas. So the south, sort of perhaps starting with Kerala. It's a lovely, gentle introduction to India. I always think of it as India light. Think tropical, swaying palm trees, rice barge cruising down some backwaters, some interesting boutique small properties to stay in, lovely little homestays or farm stays if that's of interest to have that sort of cultural immersion, and but also that you've got the sort of surrounding areas as well, which you could dip into. You've got the Karnataka and Tamil Nadu for the off the beaten track, really, for the tea and the spice and the coffee plantations, indigenous villages, and then palaces and hill stations and Hindu temples. So there's an awful lot of variety, even in the south. Um, I'm a particular fan of the off the beaten track northern part of Kerala. From some of my own experiences then, I sort of was able to witness a really obscure local festival called Tayam up there, which was really a really memorable experience. So I can't recommend that area enough. Looking into Rajasthan, I think that's what a lot of people think of when they conjure up images of Rajasthan, isn't it? The colourful turbans and the saris, the painted Havelis, and the noisy, busy markets and festivals and traffic. Um, and you know, it's fantastic to sort of get around a little bit by tuk-tuk. It's very immersive, and they're wonderful forts and palaces as well. But then, as I say, you've got the neighbouring states that you can hop into if you wanted to explore a little bit more, like Madhya Pradesh, for example. It has its own forts and national parks, fantastic for tiger safaris. And also a little bit further afield, Varanasi. I think we saw some of those imagery in the video at the beginning on the Ganges and the floating candle offerings and the ghats and all of the wonderful pilgrim sites. And then the foothills, so the beautiful foothills of the Himalayas and the hill stations like Shimla, where you can get a toy train up to, fantastic Himalayan views, lovely country walks. Amritsar's also up in the foothills, the seat of Sikh religion, and the wonderful Golden Temple. And also Uttarakhand as well. Sort of absolutely beautiful hills and treks and wonderful, sort of hamlets and villages up there. And I believe that you went there actually earlier on this year, didn't you, Sam?
I did. There's that picture earlier showed, and I think yeah, one of the moments I was staying in a place called Binsar National Park. It's quite high in itself, but I think we were there 2 days and there was no visibility, and then woke up on the third morning and there was the view of the Himalayas, 180 degrees, and absolutely sort of peeking out of the haze and become more and more visible, and it absolutely magical, spellbinding view. It's one of those moments. Yeah, so thank you, Sarah, for that. That's and we haven't even touched on places like Calcutta and West Bengal and the Gujarat, and so we would be very, very happy to talk about any aspect or area of India if you're interested at some point. And that's a brief kind of introduction. On our website, we'll send some suggested itineraries. We've got these three. I think this was just an excuse to show a picture of myself with my son in a turban. That was taken 8 years ago. I'm not sure I've shown my son that picture subsequently. I'm not sure the 16-year-old teenagers will like that so much, but that's there. We've got lots on our website, but they're just suggested ideas and starting points, really. Every trip will be different depending on what you're interested in, what you want to do, when you want to go, and what you want to find. But very happy to look at that for you and look at all of the options, which are, as we say, completely unlimited. Won't go too much detail into when to go, but it is obviously important. Traditionally, the Indian tourist season is seen as being from the beginning of October through to the end of March. And that's when the majority of the country, not all, but the majority of the country is in season at that time, which means it's dry, it's sunny, and it's hot. Worth bearing in mind that Rajasthan in the middle of winter, sort of December, January, can actually get very cool, especially at night. It doesn't get particularly hot during the day. Other times of year it can get ferociously hot in northern India. So it is worth talking about that. There's a few sort of tips that are worth bearing in mind. Rajasthan, for example, actually works quite well at end of August and September, but higher chance of rain, but it's typically post-monsoon, so you get more greenery than you would at other times, and far fewer tourists, fellow tourists. Prices are lower, but particularly at the kind of honeypot destinations like Jaipur and the Amber Fort, and I've been there myself at that time and had it almost to myself with a handful of other tourists, which was an extraordinary privilege. So it's worth thinking about those sort of times. Again, another one is Kerala in April. It's hot and humid, but that actually suits quite a lot of people. And again, it's just out of season in terms of price and other tourists. So there are tips to talk about, and we can do that directly without talking about weather endlessly. So on to probably a more fun topic, which is where to stay in India. Now, again, I could talk, let's just keep coming back to this. We could talk and talk. There's so much variety. and different sorts of places that you can stay in India. And we could talk about that. We could talk about the really, really super luxury hotels, the Oberois and Leelas of this world, which are, you know, fairly wonderful, and we do include those in some of our trips. And then there's, you know, homestays, some really simple local homestays at the complete other end of the fort, and everything in between. But I think what we tend to focus on is really characterful places, and India has them in spades. And there's an interesting thing is in the 1980s, I believe it was, the Indian government knew that there were lots and lots of these palaces, forts, still owned by these noble royal families around India, that were really going to, you know, rack and ruin because the families no longer had the traditional rights or income that they had, and that had been abolished on independence. So they weren't able to support these forts and palaces, and the Indian government made a change which made it it gave some tax benefits to operating the place as a hotel or a homestay. And that has meant that large amounts of these places have been preserved, and that's had a wonderful effect of preserving these beautiful places, incredible art, crafts, artisan skills, and all the rest of it, and a wonderful experience for tourists. You know, for you and I, when we visit, you get to stay in a mind-blowingly wonderful place, often with the family literally hosting you there, telling you stories of their you know, of their family story going back 3, 4, 500 years and more. So it is just an absolutely incredible experience, and they are very characterful, and they can range from really quite simple and basic and idiosyncratic, let's say, up to very, very kind of luxurious, and everything in between. They do actually tend to be a very good value on the whole, especially compared to the Oberois and things like that. Much, much more immersive, much more interactive as well, which is why we love them. We have picked really pretty much at random 3 places to talk about. We could have talked about so many different places. So here we are, but they're ones that kind of came to mind really. Ahilya Fort in Madhya Pradesh is one that regularly tops our favorite hotels anywhere list among our consultants. So it really is a popular. It's a converted 18th century fort, incredibly rich in history and character, these incredible river views, these beautiful peaceful courtyards and cool courtyards, that sort of traditional ways of keeping cool, and you are just incredibly well looked after. It's a really kind of intimate atmosphere and really kind of magical down in Maheshwar in the heart of Madhya Pradesh. So that is one good tip. And I asked for this one to be included, Chanudgar, because I've been relatively recently and I absolutely love it. Chanud is a small town, stroke village, I suppose, in rural Rajasthan, right off the beaten track. Gar means fort, I believe, and palace. And it's you go through Chanud, and there's lots of windy little roads and streets, and this beautiful kind of village, and absolutely spotless and clean. And then you go up and you come to the top of the hill, and there is the fort, and it was refurbished kind of from the late 2000s. The patriarch and the wife asked the family, his 3 children, to come back from their professional lives in Mumbai and other places, and it's really been a work of passion to refurbish it, and they've really brought out the traditional graphs. They've moved lots of plastering that was covering the beautiful work, and the plastering and the painting around, and they've really highlighted what was magical about it. And you get this incredible experience because it's beautiful, incredibly comfortable and lovely, and you are looked after by a family in a very, very intimate family setting, and it's just an incredible privilege really to experience that and experience their real deep connection with their local area, and they are still looked upon to advocate and to help their local area, although their ancient rights and privileges are long in the past. The food is incredible as well. You get these local recipes which are based very, very locally, but also over the years, the family have married a princess from Gujarat, and she's brought in recipes, and the family recipes are closely guarded, so they're absolutely unique to Chanudgar, which is pretty special. A third, another real favourite, Chambal Safari Lodge, and I think what's wonderful about this place is that it highlights an area that just no one really would think of as a tourist destination. Actually, not far from Taj Mahal. It's about an hour and a half drive, I believe, but the area was known as a sort of outlaw bandit country. There's not really much there, but the owners had this vision that there was something to show and something there, and there's incredible wildlife on the Chambal River locally. So there's safaris there. There's really, really interesting people in the local area have lived very distinct traditions, and just a wonderful place. And we've included it here particularly as we've got a interview with the owner Anu, who's an incredibly articulate and interesting person, and we did an interview with her last year, and we'll share that afterwards. So I'd recommend to watch that. It's really good. Sarah, is there anywhere that you'd just like to highlight?
Well, it's more, I think, because what I'd like to highlight is some of the experiences that are unique to these places. You wouldn't be able to get them anywhere else. And you mentioned that, they have a real investment into their, sort of local area. And it's a real privilege to have that experience with them. You could go to an animal fair, or go to local temples and meet the local priest and have an offering, or a blessing. There's cycle rides through the local villages, and actually a really interesting tip that that Anu has shared with us, the host at Chambal Safari Lodge. There, if you are into history, real history buffs, there's a very interesting link to the Great Hedgerow of India. I won't say too much, it's on our reading list, but apparently it goes through um, uh, the area there, and you can see little uh, um, ruins and suggestions of it in the local area.
Yeah, that's incredible. And there's another a tribal people locally who trace their ancestry back to Alexander the Great. And they have, there are very distinct kind of patterns and in their clothing and their look that do kind of support this, which is just absolutely extraordinary if true. And they are very proud of that link. So just one of these amazing experiences. India itself, I think, is all about those immersive experiences, isn't it, Sarah?
Absolutely, absolutely. Sort of what, just as a little hint from that, I'll take the cue from food. But sort of what we tend to do is have a very in-depth consultation with our clients, with you guys, and to get to know you really well and your interests, and tailor and suggest immersive experiences that you would particularly enjoy. If you are a foodie, you're not going to be disappointed in India. There are some really fantastic cuisines, and sort of we have some really wonderful immersive experiences that dip into food, whether or not it's sampling it, so by cycle rickshaw along the street food, and sort of trying tried and tested snacks along the way. your guide will introduce you to the vendors, and you'll get their backstory. It's a really fun immersive experience. Another foodie one perhaps is if you want to sort of learn how to cook authentic curries. Your host will teach you, and then you dine on your spoils over dinner, and it's a lovely way to sort of culturally interact with the host of your homestay. Um, yeah, there are lots. I could go on and on, but you get the idea. It's about connecting, and a two-way street, having that opportunity to talk to the local people and share each other's stories, and come away with some fantastic memories.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so important. Um, so just briefly, what ETG will bring to any trip is that to make sure that we deliver on our promise to allow you to have that little bit of an adventure as well as a beautiful, relaxing holiday. We will include those immersive experiences in every trip, and often they are exclusive to our trips, or they are sourced from little local suppliers in local to that area who can really bring their place to life. Secondly is the secret element, which is something a little bit extra. We try not to tell you too much about beforehand, so that so we get that sense of serendipity, of discovery. Sometimes things can be a bit too predictable, I think. So I'll let Sarah talk to that a bit more. And thirdly is what we call our give back experiences. We believe that travel done with care and compassion is a tremendous force for good in the world, and we want to just include an experience where you can feel that, you can see that for yourself. So these experiences are built on various sustainability goals to do good, but fundamentally they are fun and enjoyable. And it's not about volunteering, it's not about donation or anything. It's not about kind of looking at poverty. It's about things that are fun and enjoyable, and then really making travel that two-way street. And of course, it's that making sure that we get it right, the thread of luxury, that everyone's looked after. You've got that kind of level of comfort and that you're looking for. And luxury means different things to different people, whether it's a view or taste or whatever it is. We'll make sure that is there for you. So yeah, Sarah, do you want a couple of a brief example of a secret there?
Yes, sure. I don't want to let the cat out of the bag, but uh, we incorporate this secret element, and it's very much tailored to you, and there won't be any scary surprises. It's very sort of fun. One example perhaps is a client who was taking their family, and the children were very young, and it was very important to them that, of course, they engage. So when they were on a safari in the national park, we organised a little nature walk for them, and at the end a little surprise roasting marshmallows over the campfire at the end. So it was a really wonderful way to reward the children as well, after all of their attention with the wildlife.
Yeah, no, it's brilliant when there's these little things that's unexpected, and then make it for yourself, get involved and have that experience and enjoy it and tell us about it, and share it afterwards. That's what's really important. Now we've got we've come to the end of what we wanted to make sure we covered, but we will send out some further reading that you might enjoy, and some videos, as I mentioned, particularly that interview that I did with Anu at Chamble Safari Lodge. It really is well worth a watch, purely for Anu and not for myself. I just asked the questions and let her go, and she is a really interesting person. So I would really recommend that. And any questions, do raise them in the chat, and we'll be really happy to ask separately, or as I say, you can talk to Sarah or one of our other consultants at any point. We'd love to have a bit of a deep dive and see where we can go with that. So that is brilliant. As I said, we will let you go at 2:45, but in the meantime, I've got a few more questions for Sarah, but do raise any in the chat if you have. So, Sarah, first things first, you're known in the company as a bit of a specialist for solo women travelers to India. Is that safe? And if so, how? Why?
Yes, yes, I do love it. I think it's because I used to travel solo quite a lot, and I find it so empowering, and I want to share that experience and have other people experience it. Of course, it's safe. We have a lot of backup. We pair. Uh, sort of our solo female travelers with wonderful drivers that can really support them. The same driver throughout, so that you can feel comfortable and build a rapport. We'll request local guides, female guides, when possible. But all of our guides are really wonderful. We communicate with them all of sort of the client's sort of interests, and it's very flexible as well, so that we can make sure that everything's gone at the right pace, and people can take a little bit of a downtime when they need, and yeah, it's all about the connections, and we make sure that that they have a great time. I have a few sort of solo female travelers that are my favorites, and they come back often, and sort of send them to lots of different destinations, because they know that we look after them.
Yeah, no, one in particular always says she has to feel completely safe, and then she can have that adventure from that. So that's really, really important. Tell us a little bit another type of travel, a bit about family travel, taking your family. So perhaps India is not the first destination you think of for family travel, but tell us about that.
Well, I would disagree. I think that India is a great destination for families. As I've mentioned, the south is India light. So if you're wanting a relaxed time for sort of a family, and a slower pace with shorter drive times, the south is just the ticket. There's some great adventure things to do as well, sort of trekking and kayaking. So great for sort of teenage families. But also Rajasthan as well. If you're focusing on some of the rural areas, again, it's not too overwhelming. You took your young family, didn't you, Sam, to Rajasthan, and they
I
loved
have.
it.
I've taken I took my young family. They were 6 and 8. My
Yep.
boys were when we first went to Rajasthan, and I think yeah, it was an incredible experience. They particularly enjoyed the countryside. We had an ongoing joke, which we still have to this day, that we kept stumbling into a film set, and that the director somewhere was going, right, send in the beautifully coloured the women in beautifully coloured saris, and the chaiwala, and the guy in the handlebar moustache and the turban, and it just felt like that. It was absolutely magical, but of course it was absolutely real life, and being in the country is just something, an experience that we never ever forget. Also took them to later actually to southern India, probably the other way around. I'd generally recommend, southern India is a softer landing. And we traveled to Kerala. They absolutely loved that. In particular, particularly remember starting in eating some Indian food in a restaurant that I know quite well, actually in Cochin, which says delicious South Indian curries on ola leaves, on banana leaves, and you eat with your hands. And my children were absolutely blown away by this and felt kind of very sophisticated, like very sophisticated travelers. And I think it really opened them up to different kind of food experiences. And I saw them kind of, kind of growing in front of me there. So it was really very special, taking the family there. So time for a couple more questions. Travel, looking at travel in India, you did touch on train travel, but I think another myth we could have done is that, train travel is always, people absolutely stuffing onto the planes, onto the trains, and, half out the window and things like that. But we do try and include trains. Do you want to talk about that a bit, Sarah?
Yes, absolutely. I think I mentioned that the level of comfort on board is really lovely. Sort of the AC chair class or executive class, and the carriages, sort of are sort of 2 by 2 with a central aisle. You're served food and chai from the conductor, and it's a very comfortable way of traveling. We pre-book the tickets as well, so you know exactly which carriage and seat you're going to be sitting on. Your guide will make sure that you get to the right seat. And actually, the chaos, I think, comes from the platforms more, and that's the exciting thing. That's the wonderful tapestry that is India's life. Um, you know, everyone's traveling somewhere, and the networks are incredible. So you can have some really, really wonderful people watching on the platforms, but your guide will make sure that you are navigated through that really, really seamlessly.
Brilliant. And got a question here from George. Thank
Mhm.
you for that. What about language? He says, I know English is spoken in India, but would learning a few basic phrases in the regional languages help?
Absolutely. Hindi is probably the more the most dominant language, and so we do give you a few little phrases before you go, but absolutely your guide would be more than happy to teach you some more as you go, and you will absolutely delight the people that you meet if you try.
Particularly the regional language. People will be absolutely
Oh,
blown away if you start to
absolutely.
speak. I don't know, Kuman, thinking this was where I last visit, but Kumani, which is a region of Uttarakhand, that just learning a couple of language really, really opens doors.
Mm,
People are very, very pleased by
mm,
it. I
mm.
think Hindi, I'm not an expert, but it does seem to me to be a very colourful language. So even people who speak English almost as a first language tend to like to sort of swear and say, speak colourfully in Hindi. It seems to be that sort of language. So yeah, absolutely is the answer to that. So good. Well, I think we will leave it there, because we are coming up to quarter 2, and you will no doubt be hungry and maybe keen to, after all this talk of food, keen to eat. So as we say, we'll follow up with this. We will include a recording if you missed part of it or want to rewatch it. And there's lots of things to read and watch if you're interested. And Sarah would be absolutely delighted to hear from you, to talk in more depth, and even just explore whether it would be right for you at a particular time. There's absolutely no expectations after that. So just get in touch, and we would really, really love to hear from you.
Absolutely.
Perfect. All right. Well, have a lovely evening. Thank you so much for joining us. Really, really appreciated. And we hope to see you again sometime. Thank you very much.